Welcome back to the channel. Today we are beginning something I have wanted to do for a long time. We are starting a multi-part deep dive into one of the most sacred, most dangerous, and most powerful sections of the entire Zohar. I am talking about the Idra Rabba, the Greater Assembly. Now, if you have been following the Foundation series, you already have the architecture. You know the 10 Sefirot, you know the 4 worlds, you know the 5 levels of soul, you understand Tikkun. All of that was building towards this. Because the Idra Rabba is where everything we have learned so far comes alive in the most dramatic, the most intense way imaginable. This is where the abstract becomes visceral. This is where theology becomes experience. So what I want to do in this first episode is set the stage. I want to tell you what the Idra Rabba actually is. I want to walk you through the story of how it happened, who was there, where they were, what the atmosphere was like. I want to explain why the ancient Kabbalists considered this text so sacred that studying it was literally a matter of life and death. And then I am going to give you a roadmap for this whole series so you know exactly what is coming in each part. Let's get into it. So first things first, what is the Idra Rabba? The word Idra in Aramaic means a threshing floor. It is the place where grain is separated from chaff. And that image is not an accident. A threshing floor is where you take the raw harvest and you process it, you refine it, you separate what has value from what does not. And that is exactly what is happening in this text. The deepest mysteries of the divine are being refined, clarified, and revealed for the first time. The Idra Rabba appears in the Zohar on Parashat Naso, which is in the book of Numbers. And it records a gathering, a real event, according to the tradition, where Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai assembled his closest students, his inner circle, his Chefraya, in an open field on a threshing floor. And he began to reveal secrets about the nature of God that had never been spoken aloud before. Not in the temple, not in the academies, not even among the prophets. These were secrets that had been sealed since before the world was formed. Now, I want you to understand the weight of that. In the Kabbalistic tradition, there are levels of secrecy. There are teachings you can share openly. There are teachings you only share with qualified students one-on-one. And then there are teachings that were never meant to be spoken at all. They were meant to be transmitted in silence, heart to heart, or preserved only for the world to come. The Idra Rabba sits right at that boundary. Rabbi Shimon is breaking a seal. He is opening a gate that had been shut since creation. And he knows the cost of doing that. He knows it might kill him. He knows it might kill his students, and he does it anyway. So who was there? The text tells us very specifically. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai gathered 9 of his closest companions, making 10 in total, including himself. And those 10 correspond, as you might expect, to the 10 Sephirot. This is not a coincidence. This is a deliberate sacred architecture. Each companion embodies a different aspect of the divine structure. And together, they form a complete spiritual circuit. They are not just studying the tree of life. They are the tree of life. They are a living Sephirotic array standing on the earth under the open sky. The 9 companions were Rabbi Elazar, who was Rabbi Shimon's own son, Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosi bar Yaakov, Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Hiskiah bar Raf, Rabbi Kia, Rabbi Yosi, and Rabbi Yesa. 10 men standing on a threshing floor under the open sky. And Rabbi Shimon tells them directly. He says, "Now is a time of favor. Now is an et radzon. I want to enter the world to come without shame. I want to reveal holy words that until now have not been revealed to any human being." Think about that for a moment. This is Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, the man who spent 13 years in a cave, receiving revelations directly from Elijah the prophet. The man the Zohar itself calls the Holy Lamb, the Bodzina Kadisha. This is the brightest light of his generation, perhaps of any generation. And he is saying there are things he has been holding back. There are things even he has not yet spoken. Mysteries he received in the cave that he has been carrying alone in silence for years. And the time has come to release them. Now, here is where it gets really intense. Before the teaching even begins, Rabbi Shimon asked the companions to take an oath. He asked them to swear with their mouths and their hearts that they will not profane these mysteries. And then something extraordinary happens. They go out into the field and they sit down among the trees. And Rabbi Shimon stands up and prays. And he weeps. He says, "Woe if I reveal these secrets, and woe if I do not reveal them. If I reveal them, those who are not worthy will learn things they should not know, and they will use that knowledge to do harm. But if I do not reveal them, the companions will lose these teachings forever, and they will perish from the world." This is the paradox at the heart of all genuine esoteric transmission. The knowledge is dangerous if you share it, and it is dangerous if you do not. Rabbi Shimon has to make a judgment call in real time, and he decides the time is now. The window is open, and he begins. But the danger is not hypothetical. During the course of the Idra, 3 of the 10 companions, Rabbi Yossi bar Yaakov, Rabbi Hizkiah bar Raf, and Rabbi Yesa, they die. They literally die during the teaching. Their souls leave their bodies from the sheer intensity of the revelations being disclosed. The Zohar describes angels carrying their souls upward. It describes voices from heaven declaring their blessedness. They did not die from punishment. They did not die because they sinned. They died from proximity to a light so powerful that their vessels could not contain it. The Zohar says that each one departed. Rabbi Shimon could see their souls being received above with great joy. And the remaining companions are shaken. They are terrified. Rabbi Shimon has to steady them. He has to tell them, "Do not be afraid. We are a holy tree, a strong tree." But even so, the companions weep. The field itself trembles. Creation is responding to what is being spoken. And if you know the Kabbalistic framework, that language should sound familiar. Vessels that cannot contain the light, that is the Sefirat HaKelim, the shattering of the vessels. We have discussed this in the previous videos. This playing out on a human scale. These men became living enactments of the cosmic drama they were learning about. The Idra is not a lecture. It is a cosmic event. Heaven and earth are intersecting in real time on that threshing floor. So, what was being revealed that was so powerful? What were the secrets that could literally kill a man? This is where we need to talk about the actual content of the Idra Rabba and what makes it different from everything else in the Zohar. The Idra Rabba is primarily concerned with what is called the Partzufim, the divine configurations or divine countenances. Now, in the Foundation series, we talked about the 10 Sefirot as the basic structure of emanation. The Partzufim are the next level. They are the way the Sefirot organize themselves into complete interactive personalities, faces, if you will, of the infinite. And the Idra focuses specifically on 2 of these configurations. The first is Atika Kadisha, the Holy Ancient One, also called Atik Yomin, the Ancient of Days. This corresponds to the very highest level of Keter, the crown. It is the most concealed, the most hidden aspect of the divine, the part of God that is so transcendent, so beyond all categories, that it cannot even be called God in any conventional sense. The second configuration is Zeir Anpin, which literally means the small face or the short-faced one. Zeir Anpin corresponds to the six Sephirot from Chesed down to Yesod, and it represents the aspect of the divine that we interact with most directly in prayer, in mitzvot, in the day-to-day flow of spiritual life. And what the Idra does is it takes you through these configurations in extraordinary anatomical detail. It describes the skull of the Ancient One. It describes the forehead, the eyes, the nose, the beard, the dikna, which has 13 attributes. It describes the hair, the brain membrane, the dew that flows from the concealed head. Every single feature is a gateway to a different dimension of divine reality. Now, I know that sounds strange if you are coming to this call. God has a skull, God has a beard. But remember, and this is absolutely essential, the Zohar is not being anthropomorphic here. It is not saying God has a physical body. What it is doing is something far more sophisticated. It is using the structure of the human form as a map. Because the human being is created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim. The human form is the master key to understanding the divine architecture. As above, so below. The body is the code. Every limb, every organ, every feature of the face corresponds to a flow of energy, a channel of light, a specific function in the divine economy. And when the Idra describes the eyes of the Ancient One, it is describing how mercy flows. When it describes the nose, it is describing how patience and judgment interact. When it describes the beard, it is describing the channels through which compassion descends into the lower worlds. So why does this matter? Why should you, sitting here watching this right now, care about what 10 men discussed on a threshing floor 2,000 years ago? Here is why. The Idra Rabba is not just a text. It is a technology. In the Kabbalistic tradition, when you study the Idra, when you read these configurations, when you meditate on the anatomy of the divine countenances, you are not just learning information. You are not just collecting data for your intellect. You are participating in a Tikkun. You are drawing down the same light that was present on that threshing floor. The letters, the words, the Aramaic itself, they are vessels. And when you engage them with the right intention, with kavanah, they activate. The text is a portal. It is a living transmission that bridges the gap between your consciousness and the consciousness of Rabbi Shimon and his companions. The Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, the greatest Kabbalist of the 16th century, he taught that the study of the Idra Rabba is one of the most powerful tikkunim available to the human soul. He himself would study it regularly. The Ben Ish Chai records that certain communities would read the Idra Rabba on the eve of Shavuot, the holiday that celebrates the giving of the Torah, because the Idra represents the deepest layer of Torah, the Torah before it became Torah, the primordial wisdom encoded in the structure of the divine face. And here is something that most people do not know. The Idra Rabba is one of a set of 3 related texts in the Zohar. You have the Idra Rabba, the Greater Assembly, which is what we are studying right now. Then you have the Idra Zuta, the Lesser Assembly, which records Rabbi Shimon's final teachings on the day of his death. What we call the Idra of the Hilula, the day of his departure from this world. And then there is the Sifra Ditsniuta, the Book of Concealment, which is a short, extremely dense, almost cryptic text that serves as the foundation for both Idras. Think of the Sifra Ditsniuta as the seed, the Idra Rabba as the tree, and the Idra Zuta as the fruit. They are one continuous revelation unfolding across different moments in Rabbi Shimon's life. The Sifra Ditsniuta is only about 5 chapters long. It is almost impossible to understand on its own. But when you read it through the lens of the Idra Rabba, it opens up completely. And the Idra Zuta completes the circuit. It is Rabbi Shimon on his deathbed, finishing what he started on the threshing floor. So this series on the Idra Rabba is really the centerpiece of a much larger architecture. Once we finish this, the door to the Idra Zuta and the Sifra Ditsniuta opens naturally. So here is what is coming in this series. Over the next several episodes, we are going to go through the Idra Rabba section by section. We are going to take our time with this. I am not going to rush it. In part 2, we are going to go deep into Atika Kadisha, the holy ancient one. We will look at the Gulgalta, the skull. We will look at the Afirah, the concealed air or atmosphere that surrounds the ancient one. We will explore the Mochah Sti Ma'ah, the concealed brain, and the Tala, the dew of life that descends from the highest levels. In part 3, we tackle the Dikna, the beard of the ancient one, the 13 Tikkune Dikna. This is one of the most famous and most complex sections of the entire Zohar, and it directly connects to the 13 attributes of mercy that we invoke on Yom Kippur. There is a reason these prayers have such power. The Idra tells you why. Then, in later parts, we will move into the configurations of Zeir Anpin, the eyes that never fully close, the nose from which the breath of life emerges, the forehead that determines whether prayer is received. We will cover how Atika, Kadisha, and Zeir Anpin interact, how the one nourishes and sustains the other. And we will close the series with the aftermath, what happened after the Idra, the death of the three companions, and how Rabbi Shimon processed everything that took place. So that is the overview, that is the map. We are standing at the entrance to one of the deepest, most powerful, and most sacred texts in the entire Kabbalistic tradition. The Idra Rabba is not for casual reading. It requires preparation. It requires reverence. It requires kavanah, genuine intention. And it requires a willingness to let these teachings change you from the inside out, because they will. If you approach this material with sincerity, it will rearrange something in your soul. That is what it is designed to do. If you have been following the Foundation series, you are ready for this. You have the structure. You have the vocabulary. You have the framework. Now we go deeper. Now we go into the heart of the Zohar itself. If you are new here, I would strongly recommend going back and watching the Foundation series. Those 12 videos will give you everything you need to follow along with what we are about to do in this series. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next video. Shalom.